I never thought the day would come when my own family would uninvite me from Thanksgiving. But there it was, a single text on my phone that felt like someone had slammed the door in my face. This year, we're doing Thanksgiving at Claire's. After what happened last summer, we think it's best you skip this one. We want a peaceful holiday. My name is Isabel Hayes. I'm 35 years old. And for the first time in my life, I've been officially cut out of my family's holiday. I sat in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, phone glowing in my hand, while the smell of cinnamon and roasted nuts from the bakery downstairs drifted through the window. The city was alive, but inside my chest there was a sharp, empty ache. For years, Thanksgiving meant I cooked the family meal, even after my father died 3 years ago. I was the one who kept the recipes alive, who cleaned up while my younger sister Claire posed for Instagram photos with her perfect life. And now, the very sister who had drained Dad's life insurance to fund her luxury home goods startup was hosting the holiday. I was the one being told to stay away, because I dared to speak the truth at last summer's reunion. I stared at the pile of recipe cards on my counter. Mashed potatoes, brown sugar pecan pie, cranberry glaze, traditions that were mine now, not theirs. A text from my mom pinged seconds later. "Don't be like that, Izzy. You know how fragile Claire is about money right now." Fragile. That word scraped across my mind like sandpaper. How fragile could someone be while drinking champagne on rooftops paid for with Dad's savings? I put the phone face down and closed my eyes. The hurt was sharp, but under it a slow, steady heat of resolve began to build. If they didn't want me at their table, I would build a bigger one. The thought came sudden and clear, like a spark catching fire. I reached for my laptop and opened the folder I'd been building for weeks: plans for the community, Thanksgiving at the West Side Shelter. For 3 years, since losing Dad, that shelter had been my lifeline. I'd channeled my grief into serving meals, organizing food drives, and giving kids the kind of holiday I wished I still had. And this year, I decided their Thanksgiving would be the one that mattered. As I chopped vegetables that night in my quiet kitchen, I imagined the polished, photo-ready dinner at Claire's condo. White marble counters, gold, rimmed plates, my family laughing politely while pretending nothing was wrong, and I smiled for the first time all day. Because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't disappearing. I was just done begging for a seat at the wrong table. Being uninvited hurt, but sometimes life has to shove you out the door before you realize you were sitting in the wrong room. I didn't need their quiet pity or their staged holiday smiles. I needed a space where truth and love could actually breathe. And this year, I was finally going to make it happen. The next morning, I woke up to gray November light sliding through my blinds. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, but I didn't reach for it. I knew exactly what waited there. Guilt texts, pity emojis, and maybe another. "Please don't be upset," from my mother. I wasn't upset anymore. I was done. I brewed a cup of coffee and stared out my window at the city that had become my refuge. Delivery trucks rumbled along the street below. A man in a puffy jacket hustled past with a bag of bagels. Somewhere, families were already prepping turkeys and pies. My family was probably fussing over Claire's table settings. But me, I had work to do. I opened my laptop and checked the email thread with Marvin, the director of the West Side Shelter. He had written just 2 words after I confirmed I'd help this year: "You're magic, magic." I laughed quietly. I didn't feel like magic. I felt like a woman holding her life together with duct tape and stubbornness. But when I walked into that shelter, with its chipped blue walls and warm chaos, something inside me always clicked back into place. I grabbed my coat and headed out. By the time I arrived, the shelter was buzzing with energy. Volunteers sorting canned goods, kids chasing each other between folding tables, the smell of onions and turkey stock in the air. Marvin spotted me and waved, his grin wide.
"Ozzy!"
"Our lifesavers here." I felt my shoulders loosen for the first time in days. Here, I wasn't the difficult daughter or the family problem. I was needed, and I was enough. We started planning in overdrive. Decorations, I borrowed strings of lights from a local cafe owner. Food donations, I convinced 3 nearby restaurants to send trays of turkey, stuffing, and pies. Kids' corner, I pulled together crayons, paper turkeys, and tiny pumpkins for painting. Every hour I spent at that shelter felt like another layer of hurt peeling away. While Claire posted Instagram stories about choosing joy and avoiding drama, I was building something real. A Thanksgiving where no one would ever be told they didn't belong. That night, I returned to my apartment exhausted but alive. I opened my phone to a stream of family messages. Mom, please don't make this bigger than it is. Aunt Lydia, sweetheart, can't you just apologize for the peace of the family? Claire, I hope you're happy ruining Mom's holiday. I stared at the screen, then slowly put the phone down and whispered to myself, I'm not ruining anything. I'm building something better. Sometimes anger can eat you alive, or it can become the fuel to light up a whole room full of people who need it. I wasn't just walking away from my family's table anymore. I was setting a new one, and I had a feeling this one would be bigger than anything they could imagine. Thanksgiving morning arrived crisp and clear, the kind of New York morning where the air bites your cheeks, but the sunlight feels like hope. I was at the West Side shelter by 6 a.m., arms full of grocery bags and a heart pounding with purpose. Inside, the volunteers were already buzzing with energy. Kids hanging hand-drawn paper leaves on the walls. The scent of roasted turkey and nutmeg filling the hall. Laughter bouncing off the chipped blue walls like music. Marvin clasped my shoulder the moment I walked in. Easy, look at this, he said, gesturing to the bustling room. You did this. By 10 a.m., trays of food started arriving from local restaurants. Steaming stuffing, buttery rolls. Pies that filled the room with the smell of sugar and cinnamon. Volunteers hurried to arrange long burgundy, covered tables. Each centerpiece a tiny pumpkin with a kid's name scrawled on a leaf tag. I took a step back, and for the first time in years, my chest felt full instead of hollow. This was what Thanksgiving was supposed to be. No pretending, no playing favorites, no silencing the truth for the sake of peace. Then Marvin approached me, eyes sparkling. Guess what? Local news is sending a crew. They want to cover our Thanksgiving story. And they specifically want to interview you. I froze, a half-peeled potato in my hand. Me? Why? Because you turned a modest dinner into a celebration for the whole city, he said. You're the heart of this event. The irony hit me like a bell ringing in my ribs. My family had uninvited me to protect their image, and now the world wanted to hear my voice for creating something real. When the camera crew arrived, I wiped my hands on my apron and faced the bright light of the lens. Why did you organize this? The reporter asked. I thought of my mother's text, of Claire's rooftop selfies, of all the quiet holidays where I swallowed the truth. Sometimes, I said, looking into the camera, when one door closes, you build a bigger one, and you leave it open for everyone. By noon, the shelter was alive. Kids giggling over pumpkin painting, seniors sharing songs from their youth, volunteers passing out plates piled with turkey and pie. I slipped my phone into my bag, but the vibrations kept coming. Dozens of missed calls and texts from my family. I didn't need to check to know why. Somewhere in an Upper East Side condo, between a gold-plated turkey and Claire's curated centerpieces, my face was on their TV. And for the first time, I didn't care about their judgment. I cared about the room full of people who were smiling because I said yes to myself. There's a quiet power in refusing to beg for a seat at someone else's table. Because sometimes, the moment you walk away, you realize you were meant to build your own banquet all along. By the time the last slice of pie was served at the shelter, my phone was vibrating like it had a heartbeat of its own. I finally pulled it from my bag. The screen lit up with missed calls and messages: 8 from Mom, 5 from Dad, 12 texts from Claire, each one angrier than the last. I hesitated, then tapped open the first one. How dare you make this about you? Mom's crying because of your stunt. You're ruining our Thanksgiving. Claire, I stared at the words, then slowly looked around the bustling hall. Kids laughing with frosting smeared on their noses, volunteers singing along to an old Motown song, a man in a worn coat whispering thank you as he carried his first warm meal in days. This was Thanksgiving, not the photo-ready table where truth went to die. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and returned to stacking pie plates. That night, when I finally got home, I found one message that made me freeze. I saw you on TV. Your father would be proud. Can we talk? Grandma Eleanor, my chest tightened. Grandma had always been the quiet observer, never taking sides, but always watching. If she was reaching out, the cracks in my family's perfect wall were starting to show. The next morning, I drove to her small brick townhouse in Queens. She was waiting on the porch with a faded photo album in her lap. "Come sit," she said, patting the spot beside her. "I have something to show you." The album opened to sepia, toned photos of long tables lined with neighbors, hands clasped in prayer over mismatched dishes. "Your grandfather and I started this back in 1975, she said softly, the year the factory closed. We hosted Thanksgiving for laid-off workers and their families. What you did yesterday, it runs in your blood." I felt my throat tighten. I never knew. Of course you didn't. No one talks about it anymore. It doesn't fit the picture, perfect narrative your mother and sister like to keep. Right then, my phone buzzed. A new text from Claire. "Hope you're happy. Mom's a mess. You've humiliated the whole family." Grandma read it over my shoulder and shook her head. "I've stayed quiet too long," she said, pulling out her own phone. "Time someone besides you spoke up." Before I could protest, she had my mother on speaker. "Margaret," Grandma said, voice sharp as steel. "We need to talk about the truth. About what Claire did with James's insurance money." What followed was the conversation I'd been fighting for 2 years. Grandma laid it all bare. How Claire convinced Mom to give her temporary access to Dad's life insurance. How she siphoned the money into her luxury brand. How the family chose silence over justice to keep the peace. Mom stammered. "She's paying it back slowly." Only after Isabel exposed her. Grandma shot back. "And you punished the wrong daughter. You uninvited the one who told the truth, to protect the one who stole from her own family." "Explain that." The line went silent. Finally, Mom whispered, I need to think about this." And then she hung up. I sat there, the late autumn sun spilling across Grandma's porch, and felt a weight I'd carried for years finally shift. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the villain. I was the only one who refused to stay silent, and the truth had finally been spoken out loud. Sometimes, you can scream the truth for years and no one will listen, until the right voice joins yours. And when that happens, the walls they built to protect their lies start to crack all on their own. I thought the storm had passed. Thanksgiving had ended, the shelter was quiet again. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing my own air. But peace has a way of shattering when you least expect it. It started with an email. The subject line made my stomach twist. Request for statement, City Press. Inside, a journalist politely explained that they were running a feature on my Thanksgiving event and that they wanted my comment on the family dispute that inspired it. I froze in my kitchen, mug of coffee halfway to my lips. They knew. Within hours, my phone buzzed nonstop. This time, the messages weren't just from family, they were from strangers. Saw the news. Your sister really stole your dad's insurance. Rooting for you. Keep speaking your truth. Claire posted a video calling you a liar. What's your side? My chest tightened. I had built a sanctuary of joy, and now the outside world was dragging me back into the mess I tried to leave behind. That night, Grandma Eleanor called me. Izzy, Claire is threatening to sue you for defamation. She's saying you slandered her by letting this story spread. I gripped the phone tighter. I never said her name. You didn't have to. Grandma sighed. The truth has a way of speaking for itself. The next morning, the headline hit the local news site. From family rift to city tradition, the woman who built a table for everyone. The photo was me in the shelter kitchen, laughing with a child holding a paper turkey. It should have been a happy picture, but the subheading cut like glass. Sister of social media influencer builds community feast amid alleged family theft. My phone rang. Mom. Isabel, what have you done? Claire's sponsors are threatening to drop her. She says she can't show her face online. I closed my eyes, a strange mix of exhaustion and clarity washing over me. Mom, I didn't ruin Claire. Claire ruined herself the day she stole from Dad. The world just finally stopped looking away, like you all did silence. Then, for the first time, Mom didn't defend her. Maybe you're right, she whispered. But this family will never be the same. It's not supposed to be, I said and hung up. A week later, a city councilwoman visited the shelter. She shook my hand and said, "Your event didn't just feed people. It started conversations about community, family, and accountability. We want to partner with you for a year-round program." I smiled, because I realized something profound. Losing my family's approval gave me a bigger one. A family built of strangers, purpose, and truth. But the real twist came the following Sunday. Grandma called again, voice low but steady. "Easy, Claire's moving out of the city. She lost half her brand deals after the story went public. Your mom is broken. She wants to come volunteer at the shelter." I stared out my window at the snow beginning to fall, and for the first time in years, I felt no bitterness, only release. At the next shelter meeting, I looked around the bustling hall. Grandma teaching kids her pie recipe, Dad laughing quietly with a group of volunteers, even Mom wiping down tables, her hands trembling but present, and I realized the real revenge wasn't the news story or the public sympathy. It was this moment, watching the people who once shut me out step into the world I built without them. Being uninvited hurt. Being lied about hurt worse. But nothing heals faster than building a life so full of light that no shadow from your past can reach it. Have you ever had the truth explode bigger than you expected and change everything? Tell me how standing up for yourself reshaped your life in the comments. And subscribe to Telling Story with me for more real life stories where rejection becomes power, purpose, and freedom. Snow fell softly against my window the following week, covering the city in a blanket of quiet that felt almost like forgiveness. But online, there was no quiet at all. A journalist tagged me in a post. The woman who turned rejection into a New York Thanksgiving tradition. Underneath, hundreds of comments poured in. Finally, a story about real gratitude. This makes me want to volunteer next year. Her family sounds toxic. Good for her for walking away. I scrolled slowly, a strange cocktail of pride and unease in my chest. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was public property. Then came the emails. A publisher wanted me to write a book about my journey. A local TV producer pitched a holiday special. Even the city's community affairs office reached out. "We'd like to officially make your event part of the city's annual calendar." I closed my laptop and sat back, letting it all sink in. The girl who once cried in a tiny apartment, feeling invisible and unwanted, was now being asked to become a voice for others like her. And yet, a part of me trembled, because with the light always comes long shadows. One evening, I received a text from an unknown number. "Hope you're proud. You got what you wanted." I lost everything. Claire, my hand went cold around the phone. I typed erased and finally wrote, "I never wanted you to lose everything. I just wanted you to tell the truth." No reply came. Days later, I returned to the shelter for our first post-holiday meeting. The hall smelled of fresh paint and cinnamon. We were already prepping for Christmas outreach. Marvin handed me a folder. "Easy, we need to talk. Donations have tripled. We have enough to start a year-round community kitchen. And the city wants you to lead it." I froze. "Me? But I'm just a volunteer." "Not anymore," he said, smiling. "You're the reason this exists. You turned your pain into something permanent." As I walked home that night, snowflakes settling in my hair, I realized something profound. I wasn't just surviving rejection anymore. I was turning it into a legacy. The family that uninvited me from one table had accidentally pushed me toward a table that would never end, a table where no one was invisible. But the twist came the following weekend. I received a call from a lawyer representing my parents. "Ms. Hayes, your sister is considering pursuing legal action for damages to her brand image. Your community interviews have impacted her contracts." I almost laughed. So she stole from my father. I feed hundreds of families, and now she wants to sue me for the consequences of the truth. Legally, she has little ground, he admitted. But the family, they're scared this will get worse. I hung up and sat in my quiet living room, realizing that this story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a mirror my family couldn't escape. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Pain will chase you until you choose to stop running." I stopped, I turned around. And now pain has to look me in the eye. Being uninvited from one table was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because once you stop begging for a seat, you realize you were meant to build a hall big enough for everyone, and strong enough to outlast every storm. The first letter came on a Tuesday. A thin envelope, elegant handwriting on the front. I opened it slowly, my stomach already tight. Notice of intent to pursue legal action, Claire Hayes. For a moment, the world went quiet. Even the city noise outside my window seemed to fade. I sank into my couch, reading every word. Claire was suing me for defamation and emotional distress, claiming that my Thanksgiving interviews and public praise for the shelter had caused irreparable harm to her brand and professional reputation. I laughed, but the sound came out sharp and brittle. She stole from Dad, I feed hundreds of families, and I'm the one in trouble. I muttered to my empty apartment. By evening, the news had already leaked. A headline flashed across my phone. Influencer files suit against sister over viral Thanksgiving story. The article featured a split screen photo me in the shelter kitchen, smiling over a tray of pies. Claire on a rooftop with a champagne glass, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. The comment section was brutal. She's suing the sister who actually helps people. This family drama is like a movie. Protect Isabel at all costs. Public opinion was on my side, but I still felt that familiar sting of betrayal, like I was 13 again, accused of causing trouble for telling the truth. Grandma Eleanor called that night. "Don't you dare back down, Izzy. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about every woman in this family who stayed quiet so someone else could play perfect." Her words landed like anchors in my chest, steadying me. I realized she was right. If I caved now, it wouldn't just erase me. It would erase the table I'd built for everyone who ever felt uninvited. The next morning, I met with a lawyer of my own in a small office smelling of coffee and old books. She skimmed the letter, then leaned back in her chair. "She has no real case. She's hoping the threat will make you settle or apologize publicly. But Isabel, fighting this could get messy. Are you ready for that?" I looked out the window at the snow swirling over the city, thinking of the shelter, of the kids painting paper turkeys, of the strangers who now saw me as someone who stood up when no one else would. "I didn't start this fight," I said quietly, "but I'm not walking away from it either." The 2 days later, the twist I never saw coming arrived. The mayor's office called. "Isabel, we were planning to feature your story in our winter community campaign, but this lawsuit complicates things. Are you willing to go public and tell your side officially?" My hands tightened around the phone. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was about choosing to step fully into the light, or letting the fear of scandal push me back into the shadows I had escaped. I thought of Dad, of every holiday I sat silent at that table, and of the bigger table I had built on my own terms. "Yes," I said finally. "If the truth costs me my comfort, so be it. I'm done living in someone else's silence." Sometimes the moment you choose to stand tall is the same moment the world tries to push you down. But if you've already survived being invisible, there's nothing left to fear about being seen. The press conference felt surreal. I wasn't a politician. I wasn't a celebrity. I was just a woman who got uninvited from Thanksgiving. And now, cameras and microphones were pointed at me. It took place at the West Side shelter. Our long tables now draped with fresh winter garlands. Kids from the after-school program peeked out from behind the kitchen door, whispering like they were watching a superhero movie unfold in real life. Marvin squeezed my shoulder. Remember, you're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for everyone who ever felt like they didn't belong. I nodded, but my heart thudded like a drum in my chest. The first reporter's question hit hard. Isabel, your sister claims your public statements damaged her business. Do you regret speaking out? I inhaled slowly. I thought of every silent dinner, every swallowed truth, every time I was told to keep the peace. No, I said clearly. I don't regret telling the truth, and I don't regret feeding people who needed a place to belong. I didn't ruin anyone's life. I just refused to hide mine anymore. The room went still for a moment, then the shutters of cameras erupted. Within hours, the clip went viral, not just in New York, across the country. Headlines read, "Community hero faces family backlash after viral Thanksgiving. When one door closes. Build a bigger table. Strangers messaged me from everywhere. Your courage gave me hope to leave a toxic family. I thought I was alone. Thank you for speaking out. You turned pain into light. Keep going." And then the most unexpected twist arrived. The following week, I got an official letter from Claire's lawyer. Not a new threat, a withdrawal of the lawsuit. Enclosed was a handwritten note from Claire herself. Isabel, I wanted the world to see me as perfect. I destroyed our family in the process. I don't expect forgiveness. But I'm done fighting you. I sat in my living room, the letter trembling in my hands, tears I hadn't let fall in months finally breaking free. That weekend, the shelter hosted its first winter dinner, and my parents showed up quietly, carrying trays of cookies like visitors entering a sacred space. Dad found me in the kitchen, voice soft. "Princess, we can't undo the past, but we can try to be part of the world you built, if you'll have us." I looked around the hall, kids laughing, volunteers singing, Grandma Eleanor teaching a group how to fold paper snowflakes. "You're welcome," I said simply. "But you have to come as yourselves, not as the family that pretends nothing happened." Dad nodded, and for the first time in years, I saw real humility in his eyes. That night, as the shelter lights dimmed, I stood at the doorway watching snow swirl under the street lamp, feeling a profound sense of closure and rebirth. I wasn't the girl they uninvited anymore. I was the woman who built a bigger table and invited the world to sit with her. The day I stopped begging for a seat at their table was the day I realized I could build one so big that no one could ever erase me again. Sometimes the ultimate victory isn't revenge. It's living a life that makes the lie impossible to believe. Have you ever reached a point where you realized your strength was bigger than your pain? Share your story in the comments, and subscribe to Telling Story with Me for more powerful stories about turning rejection into freedom and pain into purpose. Winter settled over New York like a soft gray blanket, but inside the West Side shelter, light and laughter spilled from every corner. It had been a month since the lawsuit was dropped, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was living instead of defending my right to exist. The shelter wasn't just a holiday project anymore. It had become a movement. We launched Everyone's Table, a year-round program providing weekly community meals, after-school art and reading programs for kids, counseling support for families in crisis. The name made me smile every time I saw it printed on the flyers, because that was the heart of my story, a table where no one gets uninvited for speaking the truth. One crisp Saturday morning, I walked into the shelter to find Grandma Eleanor in her apron, teaching a group of kids how to roll out pie dough. "Your grandmother's famous pecan pie is now part of our tradition," Marvin said with a grin, watching the kids giggle as flour puffed into the air. In the back, I spotted Mom and Dad, quietly sorting canned goods and writing holiday cards for donors. They weren't the same people who had once chosen silence over me. They were learning to show up in small, humble ways, brick by brick. That afternoon, the mayor's office visited again. They presented a plaque with my name on it. Isabel Hayes, for building a table where everyone belongs. I held it in my hands, and for a second, I felt 13 again. The girl who once wished someone, anyone, would say they were proud of her. Only this time, I didn't need their validation. The city itself had seen me. I had seen me. Then came the twist I didn't expect. A small handwritten envelope in the shelter's mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single note. Izzy, I'm leaving the city. I need to figure out who I am without the lies. Take care of Mom and Dad. Maybe one day we can start over. Claire. I read it twice, my heart a mixture of sadness and release. I wasn't angry anymore. I just hoped she'd find the peace I had fought so hard for. That evening, we held our first winter family dinner at the shelter. The room glowed with string lights, kids ran between tables, and neighbors from every walk of life shared stories over hot soup and pie. I stood at the entrance for a moment, watching the scene that had grown from one act of defiance and a broken heart, and whispered to myself, this is what love looks like when it finally gets to breathe. Sometimes the family you're born into can't see you. Until the life you build without them shines so bright, it leaves no shadow for their denial to hide in. I wasn't just uninvited anymore. I was reborn in the space they left behind. The first snow of the new year dusted the streets of Manhattan, turning the city into a hushed silver painting. Inside the West Side shelter, we were hosting our first New Year's community dinner. String lights glimmered against the windows. The scent of cinnamon and roasted apples drifted through the air, and kids in paper crowns ran between tables laughing. I stood at the doorway for a moment, watching the world I had built bloom before my eyes. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen, laughing softly as they stacked trays of food. Grandma Eleanor taught a small group of teens how to fold napkins into swans. Marvin was coordinating volunteers for the next month. And me. I was no longer the girl who begged for a chair at someone else's table. I was the woman who built her own hall and filled it with light. Later that night, I stepped outside to the quiet sidewalk. Snowflakes clung to my hair as I stared up at the city skyline, feeling a peace I had once believed I would never deserve. I pulled out my journal, the same one I started the night my family uninvited me from Thanksgiving, and wrote the final entry for this chapter. They once told me I didn't belong at their table. They said I was the problem. But I took that rejection and built something unshakable, a place where no one has to beg to be seen. Sometimes being left out is the first step to finally letting yourself in. As the laughter of the community drifted through the door behind me, I realized that this wasn't just my story anymore. It was a story for everyone who's ever felt invisible, for everyone who's ever been told they didn't belong, for everyone brave enough to walk away from the wrong table and build a bigger one of their own. Your worth is never measured by the people who refuse to see you. Walk away from the tables that shrink you. Build the life that reflects who you are, and invite the world to join you there. Have you ever been shut out by your own family or community, only to discover your strength by creating your own path? Share your story in the comments. Your voice could be the encouragement someone needs tonight. Like, share, and subscribe to Telling Story with Me for more real life stories where pain transforms into purpose and rejection becomes the start of freedom.